I'm back. Finally. I know it's been a while since I've done a podcast. I've been wanting to do it. I mentioned in one of my, I think it was a previous podcast or one of my other videos, I mentioned that, the holiday season is a rough time for me at work, blah, 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 whatever. We've gotten through that now. The work season is back to normal, but now I'm dealing with Mother Nature and the weather. I feel like for the last week, it's done nothing but snow here. We got snow on top of snow on top of snow. It's been miserable. I drove by where I normally throw. Actually, I'll post a picture here when I edit, if I remember to do that. I'll put a picture up here of where I normally throw the park I throw it. You can see it's covered in snow, and that just doesn't really work well with doing my review videos. And so I'm struggling now with the weather. In fact, this is going on 3 years now. It was January 22nd of 2022 was the first video I put up. That was the review of the 724 Chaos. I took that video down. That was horrible review. In fact, side tangent here real quick. One of the ideas I had is in the future is doing a kind of a watch party sense, or maybe me reviewing myself, reviewing that, doing that first review. It's so bad. I cringe. I haven't actually gone back in a long time and watched it, but I took it down because it was an awful review. It was my first one. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned a ton from that video, and as I learn from every video I do, so it's. I'm glad I put it up there. I'm glad it's not up there anymore. But I thought about going back and rewatching that and kind of doing a video of me rewatching that and making fun of myself doing that. So if that's something you want to see, drop a comment down below and let me know. But anyway, I'm really working on so close to getting an indoor facility where I can start doing some videos during this winter time, especially while it's snowing out there. I've had several people reach out to me and offer me a place to go play indoors, but none of them are really super convenient. They're a 45 minutes, an hour drive away, which is difficult for me just because scheduling my work. One of the beauties of my work, maybe it's maybe stressful for some of you guys, is I don't really have a set schedule, so to speak. In other words, I could be done at noon one day. If everything goes great, everything's like it's supposed to be, I could be done by noon on a day. If nothing goes right and it's a horrible day, I could be out till I could be at work till 6 or 7 p.m. So there's a big variance. So I don't always know during the day what time I'm gonna be available. So I like having a park that's nearby that I can hop in my car and just drive 5 minutes away and just go play and throw whenever it works out for me. Having to use someone else's facility makes it a little more difficult trying to schedule that. But I'm trying to find. I've got some leads on some close by facilities, and hopefully if I can secure one of those, I can at least get me through the next month or two until the weather gets better and I can get back on schedule. But I really want to get these reviews out to you guys. I really do. I'm glad I've had a chance to get this out. I've actually been dealing with a cold and illness for the last week or so, which also delayed me from putting a podcast video out. I've got a couple bag giveaway videos I need to do as well. So a lot of things I got to get caught back up on. So bear with me. I appreciate you guys being patient. Let's go ahead and jump in on this episode. I've got there's been a lot's happened since the last podcast, but I don't, and for the sake of time and not running this through to be a 2 or 3 hour long podcast. There's a couple things I really want to talk about. Some two important things I think we take a little bit of time to discuss. I've got some, as always, strong opinions on them. Both of them happened with or both of them relate to the ACL, directly related to the Myrtle Beach Open, but they're kind of also topics and issues that cover just broad topics across the ACL and even across cornhole in general. I want to talk about those, and then I want to update you on the Bag Makers Championship. We had the Myrtle Beach Open happen, so I want to update that. We've got the Mississippi Open coming up here in Biloxi, Mississippi this weekend, so I want to give you an update after Myrtle Beach before we get to Mississippi. So I'll get that update here for the Bag Makers Championship, and then hopefully next week's jump on update you after the Open this coming up weekend. So that's if you're all ready, let's go ahead and jump in. And I want to talk about the Myrtle Beach Open in general. If you watched any of that, you probably heard. I think it was the biggest Open the ACL's had in their history. 1,095 unique players at the Open. Kudos, applaud to the ACL for having that many players out. It's awesome. I will say they did seem to mention that an annoyingly amount of times on the broadcasts and streams to see everywhere. It's like, oh, do you know we got 1,095 players, blah, blah, blah. It was a great accomplishment until last weekend. The TCL had one of their signature events in Denton, Texas, I believe it was. And by my calculation, they had over 1,095 players at their event. That's a regional league. It's not even a national league, not even a pro league. It's a regional league. And so it when you put it in perspective, it kind of made the ACL Myrtle Beach Open not quite as impressive. Still impressive, right? It's their biggest Open. I'm not trying to diminish that down, but you put it in perspective as well. It was Myrtle Beach in January, kind of a destination type Open. People can go on vacation, get away from the cold, get to the beach, a little bit of warmer weather. So it was kind of a great place to have that. We'll see how the attendance is at the Mississippi Open coming up this weekend in the ACL. I imagine it's not going to be anywhere near 1,095 players, but we'll see. But what I did want to talk about, and there was a Facebook post on this. I've talked to a lot of people as well. There was a lot of issues with how long that Open took, because with that many people, it just takes a long time to run through a tournament of that size. But it seemed like there were a lot of issues, not a lot. There were some issues and again, I didn't talk to 1,095 players. I talked to a smaller sample size of that, but everyone I talked to seemed to have a similar take on it, a similar complaint that there was a lot more dead time there should have been. I'm going to read this Facebook post here that was posted up here. In fact, I'll pull it up for you guys real quick, and I don't want to talk about this. We'll call him Bob. I blurred out the last name just because I didn't ask for permission. Not that I need permission. They posted on Facebook. I guess I could pull it out there, but I just didn't want to just blast someone on Facebook for me. And it's nothing they did wrong. But Bob posted, and I'll read this for you guys. I just returned from a 4-day trip to the ACL Myrtle Open, which was extremely disappointing. The duration of each event was unacceptably long. The doubles on Saturday lasted over 15 hours, and Sunday was no better. In singles, 5 sets out of the 97 were assigned to a 48-player bracket, which took over 7 hours. And then he went on to talk about the tournament directors. There was one thing he said, and I'm gonna say because I think it's funny. He said instead they sat behind their tables. He's talking about the tournament directors, seemingly uninterested with signs in front of them reading "Leave me alone, math is hard." Now I don't know if that's sarcasm. Sarcasm doesn't really translate very well through social media. I don't know if he's being sarcastic there or if they literally had a sign that said "Leave me alone, math is hard." It's kind of funny, and I get that. I've directed tournaments, nothing to this level, but I've directed tournaments. Being a tournament director, there's a lot you have to do. There's a lot going on. I know they have multiple directors there for these big opens. There's a lot that they're doing. It's a lot of stress for that window, that weekend. It's a small time frame. They got to get a lot of things going on. And at the Myrtle Beach, they had the national high school and the national college events going on as well as the Open. So they, I'm not using that as an excuse. The ACL scheduled that way, so they knew that was there. That was kind of on them to put that there, knowing this is going to be a massive Open. That maybe that should have been moved to a smaller Open and maybe not put into one of the largest or the largest Open out there. That's kind of on the ACL for that. But I brought that up, and I want to follow it up with the comment that Trey had on that. And Trey Ryder, if you follow the ACL, you probably know Trey Ryder. He's I don't know what his title is anymore. He's had several different titles in the ACL. I'm not sure what his official title is. I don't want to speculate on that wrong. But he's in a way, he's kind of been one of the faces of the ACL as far as the corporate side of it for a while. For as long as I've known the ACL, Trey's been really involved. And I do give Trey kudos because he will come on here, he will make comments, he will share information. And that's one of my personal complaints to the ACL is their lack of communication, sometimes their unwillingness to communicate. I've said it before. I've sent emails to the ACL asking questions, get clarification on issues, topics, and really gotten no response. Like they just don't want to respond back. And it's so frustrating when you're trying to do something like this and share information and be as accurate as possible, and you can't get answers directly from the league. So that's my frustration. I do applaud Trey for at least answering questions at times and sharing information out there. He does do a good job of communicating. And I want to touch on this just real quickly here. There's a couple things he says here that I want to address. But real quick, Trey responded back that people want big events until they show up to the big events. Large tournaments are a math problem, not a director issue. You have a venue that fits 80 sets of boards with 1,095 players. The long tournament times are attributed to that math. You want more space, expect lower payouts for higher venue prices. You want less wait time, expect smaller events that sell out and turn people away. That is an excellent point, and no one can argue that, right? If you want the bigger payouts, you're going to want more players there, or you're going to have to pay more to play. And people are already complaining about the prices they're having to pay to go to these ACL Opens, which means if you want these bigger payouts, you now have to bring more players in to get the bigger payouts, get that bigger prize pool. The more players you bring in, the longer term it's going to last. If you want a bigger venue to have more sets of boards, then you got to pay more again to pay for that. Because look, venues are expensive. I mean, I'm sure the ACL is paying $30, $40, $50,000 for some of these venues to just to get the venue. That doesn't include, and I think I talked before, that doesn't include like the electricity they're running, the internet they're running, any of the other things. That's just to rent the building. And then a lot of times they have to pay because the venue will then supply the labor for setting up the tables or setting up the certain parts of it and operating, cleaning up and security and everything. Like there's a lot of things that go in. It costs money to rent these big venues. And I don't think people always understand it. So on the ACL side, it is expensive to run these venues. And if you want to have bigger venues to accommodate more people and to move through quicker, you're going to have to pay more. And so there is a trade-off. How much do you want to pay, and how long are you willing to wait? Or how much of a lower payout do you want? You've got to give and take somewhere in this. So I do understand what Trey's saying. He's making a really valid point here. He goes on to talk about tournament directors this week in work. He lists the times they're worked, and he said that's 72 hours since Wednesday. They have the best work ethic around. I'm not saying, look, I've never directed a tournament this size, but I've directed tournaments. It's not an easy job. It takes a lot of work. My only gripe with this is for one, I don't think this is the right approach to tell a player that your tournament director works 72 hours since Wednesday to run the tournament. One, the Open's not every weekend. They do 11 Opens, 6 signature events in the world. So you're looking at 18 weekends a year they're doing this. Now, I'm not saying these directors aren't doing other things throughout the week, other things on the other weekends. You're talking 18 weekends a year, right? So if they're working 72 hours for 18 weeks a year, that doesn't sound as impressive when you break it down that way. Again, I'm not saying they don't do other things. Don't twist my words on me. But for a lot of these players, you got to look at what the players have sacrificed, right? For some of these players, they may have had to work multiple weeks of 72 hours to make enough overtime to afford the travel expenses to go to Myrtle Beach, to take their family for the vacation, to go pay for the entry fees, to play in these tournaments. So these players have made sacrifices too to show up. It's not easy for every player to make it to this event. So when they're talking about what it costs the players to go to these events, and I think that's what the ACL needs to understand is on the player side, it's not just entry fees, right? It's not just the entry fees they have to pay. They have to pay for the hotel rooms. And when you have big events, and these cities know, Myrtle Beach knows there's a big event, a lot of times hotel prices go up. The costs around there, everything goes up because they know people are going to come in. They're captive. They have to get hotel rooms. They have to go eat. They have to do these things. So prices go up a little bit. So you got to factor that in. You got to factor the travel costs in, getting to and from the events that these players are doing, and then you got to factor the time these players have to take time off from work to go to these events because, when they're traveling, depending on how far they're traveling away, sometimes they can't just drive up that morning of the Saturday morning of the event or whatever. They have to fly in and they have to plan a day or two in advance. And so there are other expenses involved on the player side more than just the entry fees. And I think the ACL doesn't always seem to understand that as well. So when you're telling me that your tournament directors are working 72 hours, the other thing on that too is they're getting paid for that. That's not volunteer time. These directors are being paid for that. That's part of their job. So I always hate when people complain about their job when what they're doing is part of their job. If you're being asked to do extra stuff that's not part of your job, you have a complaint. But if you're a tournament director in the ACL, you know this is happening. You should expect this. If you didn't expect this, that's on you. So to use that as I don't want to say excuse, but I mean, Trey's kind of using an excuse, trying to say, hey, give the tournament directors a break. Look how they're working. They know that. They knew that coming in. They know that's what it entails. If they weren't prepared for that, they shouldn't have took that position. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the 72-hour work week that the tournament director is going through when it comes to an Open. Now, the reason I want to mention this is this next statement, the next sentence of Trey's is, I'll also let you know on a secret. The ACL will lose money on this event. Literally be in the negative. This is the largest Open the ACL's had player-wise, and yet they're going to lose money. So if they're losing money on this one, how many others are they losing money on? And now that kind of raises a red flag to me. You're telling me that you can't be profitable. Where's the money going? And then it brings me back to the question of, then why run this tournament if you're going to lose money? And that's where I went back to. Remember I mentioned, the ACL kept mentioning all the time, the 1,095 players. I mean, I heard that so many times on the live stream, multiple between the singles, the doubles, any event there, it seemed like they were mentioning that. I think I've seen Facebook posts about how big the tournament was, and people praise, oh, the ACL ran a great tournament. Look, the cornhole numbers are up. Look, the ACL's not struggling. But then you tell me they're losing money. Why would you lose money to run this big of a tournament? And the only thing I can think of, and this is conspiracy theory, this is speculation, but I think the ACL wanted to, they've heard the talk, they've heard the criticism, numbers are down, cornhole's struggling, the ACL's struggling. They wanted to put a big event on and say, look, we're not struggling, to give you a show. Oh, look, we're having a great year, or look at this turnout. The ACL is not struggling. And that's the only reason why I think they would do it for a loss, right? And can they run a tournament at a profit? I guarantee you they can, right? I think the reason they lost is probably, one, it's Myrtle Beach, it's expensive, the venue size. I'm sure what they had to spend to rent that venue and pay for everything it takes to operate the tournament. That's where the money went. And it's Myrtle Beach, right? You can't tell me Myrtle Beach shouldn't be that expensive, because Rock Hill, South Carolina is 3-4 hours away from there. So the travel time to get your equipment from your headquarters to the tournament. There's not a lot of travel. You don't have to pay a lot of labor and people driving, as opposed to going across country to to Vegas or to somewhere in Texas or even to Chicago, right? So your travel expenses are down. So all the money's got to be then going into the venues and what they had to pay to get Myrtle Beach. And maybe the question should be is maybe you shouldn't go to Myrtle Beach, right? You can go to a smaller area, go to a smaller city, go to a city that doesn't have the name recognition, right? And you can probably get places cheaper, and maybe that's what you need to do. But I do think the ACL they knew going to Myrtle Beach was going to draw more people in, right? That's a destination open that's going to draw a lot of people, and they allowed the numbers to go more than what I think they could really effectively run a tournament. But I think they did it because I think they wanted to say, look how big the tournament was. We're not struggling. And then my question goes, why would you want to make that point? If you really aren't struggling, why does it care unless you're trying to paint a narrative to make people think that or not see what's really happening? So it does raise a lot of questions for me. There's a lot of red flags with that. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you operate a tournament knowing you're going to lose money, especially a tournament that big? If you can scale it down and make money, why not do that? So I would love to know more about why the ACLs wanted to lose money on a tournament like this. Like, that doesn't make sense. Maybe there's something I'm thinking of, but it doesn't make sense to me on that. And then Trey goes on to say, it's posts like these that is leading us to drastically change our amateur model going forward. The days of these type of events are going away. So they're no longer going to have these big events. Is that what I don't know if he's saying they're no longer going to have these large events. They're just going to start going to smaller events, or they're no longer going to have amateurs at the events. The Open's going to be pro onlys, which is something I've thought they're going to head to, is getting rid of amateur divisions. But I'm going to address that here in a moment too. That's not, Trey kind of doesn't go that direction in a later comment. And then he says, I'm not here to fight anyone. Let's just agree that you don't like the product currently and we have to find a different way to do it. But let me be clear here. There's no group of staff members that care more about the sport and players than those in the building, and that's a fact. I don't think anyone's saying that their staff doesn't care about the sport and doesn't. I don't think that the question's there. I will say this, like Trey's trying to say that the tournament directors weren't at fault. There's a lot of things tournament directors can't control, but one thing I think is in their control is how efficient the tournament runs. And from the people I talked to, a lot of the problems with not just the tournament, any corner tournament you go to, the biggest issue you have time-wise is the time between a match or game finishes and the next one starts. There's always a massive gap. Players are just not in that big of a hurry to get to the boards to start the next game. And whether it's a notification issue, whether it's just a player it doesn't care, or players aren't paying attention, I don't know. But I've had that in terms I run. Is trying to get people to realize you need to stay on top of, you're the player, you need to stay on top of when your next match is and be ready and there to go in a timely manner. It shouldn't, if every time it's a 10 or 15, 20-minute gap between games, that just makes the tournament last hours and hours longer than it needs to. And a part of that is on the tournament directors, I think, to monitor that and make sure there aren't big gaps happening. If there are, to figure out why and to help move things along. I do think that is part of the tournament director's job and that they should be keeping an eye on that. Not saying they weren't, maybe they were. There's only so much they can do. Again, it's up to the players to make sure at the board. What I would like to see, not just the ACL, but I think across the board in cornhole tournaments, is I would love to see a timer. When a game's over and the next match is assigned to that board, there should be, both players' names or both teams' names, whatever up there, and there's like a 5-minute clock below it. And when you show up to the board, you go to the tablet and you hit your here and your timer stops, your timer clears off, you're good. If the 5-minute timer ends and one person or team isn't there, they forfeit. If both aren't there, they both forfeit, whatever. I think there has to be a timer because as a player, it's your job to know when you need to be on the boards. You can't rely on notifications from the app or the tournament or whatever. You can pay attention. You can look on the bracket and see if your game is done. Look on the bracket and say, okay, who am I playing? I'm playing the winner of this next match or the loser of this next match, and go look and see where that match is. Right? How far along is that match? Is that match being played? Maybe that match is still there's 2 more games to play before you get to that match, so you don't know. Or you can look at the match and say, oh, that match is being played right now. It's almost over. You can be ready, and you can know I need to check back in a few more minutes and you should be monitoring the tournament bracket to know when you need to play. Now, maybe there should be a board somewhere with a big bracket up there that you can go look at or whatever, but I think it is your responsibility as a player to know when your next match is and be there in a timely manner. And there needs to be something set there. And I don't think it should be up to your opponent. I think the rule in the ACL is if you're there and your opponent's not there, you can notify somebody and it's up to you to notify somebody to let them know that your opponent hadn't shown up. But I don't think it's fair to put that on the players again. That should be done by the tournament directors. That's something I think you can add into the apps. All the apps can. I mean, Scoreholio, the ACL app, whatever app you're using, you can add in a timer there that just pops up automatically when a court's assigned. And then when you show up, you click it, say you're there, the timer stops, and if both teams show up, great, then you can play. And I think that would speed things up. And you do that, you shave down that time between matches by 5, 10, 15 minutes every game. Dude, you cut hours off the tournament. I think that's the easiest thing to do to make a tournament more efficient. And honestly, you're going to have people upset. The first time you do it, people are going to get disqualified or get forfeited matches and not realize it. They're going to be upset. But once it happens once, they're going to pay more attention next time, right? I hate to say that. I hate to be that guy, but I think you announce that and say, this is what we're doing. And then you do it. And it's up to the players to make sure they're where they need to be when they need to be there. So I would love to see that happen. But I do think that the tournament directors are at fault to some degree when the tournament isn't run that efficiently. That's part of what they need to do, and I do think they need to take responsibility. I don't think it's fair for Trey to say that it's not their fault, right? Now, I want to follow up again on another comment Trey made, and this was a response to a comment. And I don't remember what the comment was, and it's not really that. I just want to follow up right down here in the second paragraph. I want to read this. It says, Trey said, if anyone wants to blame anyone or anything, blame me. Talking about Trey, but do not blame those at the director's table. It's my job in 2025 to adjust the amateur model to bring the ACL to the next stage of growth. I want to get to that here. Remember that. We're going to get back to that. For years, all eyes have been on the pros to elevate them. Now we need to add additionally focused points on amateur players. One of those steps is seriously taking a look at opens. Again, this post reinforces change is needed, even if I strongly disagree with the premise of the post. I want to go back to that point where he said that it's Trey's job in 2025 to adjust the amateur model to bring the ACL to the next stage of growth. I was shocked to hear this because I've said all along, I really feel like the ACL is going pro only and wants to get rid of amateurs. I've always felt like the ACL didn't really care about amateurs. They're really wanting to be pro focused. And Trey even said that for years they've had their eyes on the pros to elevate them. He said that, and I've noticed that, right? It's really been more on the pros, not as much on the amateurs. It does intrigue me that Trey says that they want to focus on the amateur growth. That's great. I think one of the ways you do it is part of what Trey's doing here. Like, you've got to be willing to talk to your customers. Again, the ACL is a business. The amateur players are their customers. I think the amateur players are more the customers than the pro players. The pro players are almost like, I hate to say employees, they're almost like employees, right? Because they're on a different level. But it's the amateur players that are the ones that pay to come play. Like, they're paying for that product. They're paying for the experience, right? So as the amateur player, you're paying and you're getting an experience from the ACL to play in these events. And so as an amateur player, I'm the customer. The ACL is the business. And communication is key. And that's one of the major things I've had with the ACL is their communication sucks. They don't do a great job of communicating things just in general across the board. I do. Again, I applaud Trey for this. He's out there responding to comments on Facebook. And I will say, I've heard people say that they hate the negative comments and blah, 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 that you shouldn't, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, if you're in a business or any type of area where you deal with customers, you should want these negative comments. Like for me, when I first started doing this channel, I hated the negative comments. I hated the negative message. I hated the people that criticized what I did. But looking back on that, I'm thankful they did, because a lot of things they told me allowed me or forced me to make changes or address some things that maybe I didn't know I was doing wrong or I could do better. And so it really, the people who come on there and praise you and tell you you're doing great, you need those, right? You need this. But honestly, those people don't really help you as much, because if they're just telling you everything you're doing is great and you keep doing that, you never really improve. But if you have the people who come on and tell you what you're doing wrong and they complain, as long as they're doing it in a respectful way, that's the key, is how you want to convey that message. But if you have the people, if you listen to those who are your haters, the negative comments, those are the ones that are going to tell you where your weaknesses are. And if you work on those weaknesses and improve those weaknesses, you become stronger and better, right? If you bring your weaknesses up to the level of your strengths, you end up with no weaknesses, and you just elevate your everything and it becomes better. And as a business, the ACL being a business, they need to make sure they're listening to these complaints out there and addressing them. The worst thing in the world you can have when you're a business or you're dealing with public is to have people who don't care. Like, take my channel here for example. I would rather someone make a negative comment than not watch my video and not comment, right? Because if they're making a negative comment, that means they probably watched the video, right? That means they're watching my content, and in the end, that's what matters, right? What matters is people watching my content. What matters to ACL is people going to the tournament. So if you have someone going to the tournament, going to these opens, and they're complaining, at least they're going to your tournament, right? If they stop complaining and they stop showing up, that's when you have a problem, right? So to whoosh the negative away, be careful, because that means you may whoosh those people away, and then you don't have customers. The opposite of love is not hate, it's actually apathy, right? Love and hate are an emotion. And anytime you're in a business and you can create emotions with your customers, whether it's good or bad, you're at least connecting with them. When you get to the point where they don't care, and it doesn't matter what you do, they could care less, they ignore you, whatever, that's when you have a problem, and that's what you got to be careful of with the ACL. So I hope Trey is being honest when he says that his job is to bring the amateur model, is to bring growth, the next stage of growth in the ACL, which is hopefully the amateur side, to bring that up and make that better, because they definitely need to work on that. I hope that's true. I really do. I hope he means that, and I hope they do that, and hopefully they're listening to what's being said and all the issues, and they're addressing them. Fingers crossed that's what's going on. I really want to see things get better in the upcoming years. I really do. I said I criticize cornhole, I criticize the ACL, I criticize the leagues a lot, but it's because I'm passionate about it. I want to see the sport grow. I don't like the direction I see with the ACL. I don't like a lot of what they're doing, and so I am a little critical of that, because if in my eyes they go the way they're going, it's going to really impact cornhole in a negative way, which is going to impact my channel and what I do, and that's not what I want. I want to see cornhole take a positive step. I don't think the ACL is quite doing that as well as I would want to happen. Doesn't mean I'm right. I could be wrong. I'm just looking at it from my eyes, my side of things. It's not the direction I want. I want to see the ACL going in. So I want to step into the next area I want to talk about, and this kind of relates to what I've been talking about to some degree, and that's bag testing. And I'll make the connection here in a moment. But the ACL has done a better job this year of testing bags to make sure bags meet specifications. I'm all for that, right? If you have rules and regulations in place, I think you need to test them. You need to make sure they're being applied right. If you're going to put a rule in place, you're not going to enforce it, then why have the rule there in the first place? I'm all for that. And for bags, the ACL rules are a little different. Like ACO is slightly, they're similar, but not quite exactly the same. So ACO has, if you don't know, they have the bag dimensions. If you have a set of bags, let's grab a set of these Nola Rexes here. You've got dimensions, right? The length of the bag should be 6 inches, both directions, right? That's what it should be. But they do have a 1/4 inch allowance either way, so you can go 5 3/4 inch up to 6 1/4 inch of length. It's got to be somewhere in that measurement this way. Then you have a thickness measurement, which should be 1.3 inches thick for the ACL, but they do allow you to go down to 1.1 inch and up to 1.5 inches in thickness. So you have a little bit of variance there as well. They have a weight. It has to be 16 ounces, but you've got a 1/2 ounce leeway either way. So 15.5 ounces up to 16.5 ounces. So they're giving you specs, and they're giving you a range to fall in so that you have a little bit of room to play with. And then the other one is the diagonal, which is something they added. I think last year was the first year of the diagonal. I believe it was last year, if not maybe the year before. They haven't had it very long. The diagonal initially, when they first put it in, was 7.5 inches diagonally across, and that was a minimum. Had to be a minimum of 7.5 inches. It could be, they didn't have a maximum on that, but you could only go so big to stay within the length measurements, right? If you went too big, the bag was going to be too long lengthwise. So you got to stay within that. But 7.5 inches. This year for the 2024-25 season, they dropped that down to 7.3 inches instead of 7.5 inches. And that's important because a lot of companies actually started making bags to the quote unquote league minimum standard, and they went down. I think a lot of them went down to that, close to that 7.3. They went below the 7.5 to make bags. And the reason I mention that is because now the ACL is doing testing for bag measurements, and we're starting to see bags fail at the Open. I think anybody who wins their division in the Open, they get their bags tested. I guess they might be testing some bracket winners as well. I'm assuming the ACL can just randomly test bags if they want to. As a player, you can have your opponent's bag checked. If you think your opponent's bags are illegal, you have them checked, but you have to request that before your match starts. Once your game plays, you can't request that. It has to be done before the game starts. Once the game starts, no matter if their bags are legal or not, they're supposed to be able to throw it. But the ACL does it after the tournament's over with. So they're pulling out the league winners and other people and checking their bags for specs. I have not seen the machine the ACL does to measure bags. I have not seen it. I don't know. I do have some issues with this. And I want to pull up one, and this actually, I'm not gonna pull it up. There was a post made recently from the Myrtle Beach Open. It was a really long post, and I think I can do a better job summarizing than putting that post up and trying to read through it all. But I reached out to the person who put it up there. I reached out to him directly and asked some questions, just get some clarification. I want to make sure I've got the information right that I'm sharing with you. And it's not just this specific one, but this one really kind of didn't set well with me, the way the ACL handled it. And I wanted to bring this up because I'm sure it's not the only time this has happened. But this gentleman mentioned that his son actually played. It was his, I think it was his son's for, I think it's his first competitive tournament he played in, right? And I don't know what division he played in. I don't know if it was intermediate, competitive, whatever. I'm not sure what division. I didn't ask that. Anyway, his son won the bracket in the tournament he played in the division he played in. He won his bracket. I don't think he won his division, but he won his bracket in that division. And then he got his bags checked afterwards. And they checked the bags, and one of the 4 bags failed the diagonal measurement. It was a 1/32 of an inch too short. 1/32 of an inch, which is like what, 0.0333125 or something. I hope I got that right. I can't remember exactly. It's a very, very thin amount. And it's got me thinking that I would love to know how the ACL is measuring a cornhole bag to a 32nd of an inch. Because honestly, I'll tell you, I think it's impossible. I don't think you can measure that. And it's not because we don't have the technology. It's because a cornhole bag isn't a fixed object. If you're measuring a block of wood or a block of stone, or measuring this desk here, or measuring one of these bookshelves here, you can get down to a 32nd of an inch because it's solid, it's rigid, it has a defined edge. A cornhole bag doesn't, right? Like I can pull and twist. So I want to know how they're putting their bags on the machine to measure. Are they just flopping them down there? Are they smoothing them out? Are they pressing them down? How is the ACL putting the bags on the machine, and how are they measuring, and how are they getting a measurement to that exact, to a 32nd of an inch? And I was going to do a little experiment and do a little video and show you guys how I can manipulate a bag, because if I had that bag measured, give me 30 seconds of that bag, I can put a back machine on it. I can make it pass. Right? I can make it pass just by stretching and pulling and smoothing out. It wouldn't take even 35 seconds. I can have that bag a 32nd of an inch longer at the diagonal on both sides. Like, it's not hard to do. One bead falls over to the edge and goes back in that corner, and it passes inspection. So I don't care what machine they have. I would love to see the machine, because I don't believe there's a machine that they have that can measure a cornhole bag that exact and that accurate. I would challenge the ACL to say, measure that same bag, put it down, pick it up, put it back down, and do it 10 times. I don't think you're going to get the same measurement in 10 exact times. I could be wrong. I really could be wrong. I don't want to be that guy who says that there's no way possible, and there is. I just would love to see the machine, and what did this machine cost, right? If you're doing that, because there's no way some guy with a ruler measuring a bag to that extreme. And I was going to do a little demonstration. I was going to show you a video up there of me showing you how you can measure that. But then Ultra just recently put out a video actually showing this themselves, and they did a great job of this. I'm going to play this video. There's no sound with this, but I want to play this video here kind of for you as I'm talking about this, and just let you see that Ultra is showing you. And this first set of bags they have here, this is a new set of bags. I think they mentioned that here, but it's a new set of bags, and they're just showing you basically how you can manipulate a bag and get it to pass inspection, right? As you watch it, they'll show you, and they put the tester on. That's the Ultra has a bag checker like that. I've got one of those. When I ordered the Viper RSs, I got one of those here. I also have another one here. One I don't remember who made this one. I got it off Facebook, but this one doesn't actually have the 7 and 0.3 inch. It's got a 7.5 inch diagonal. So this is an old measurement. But you can there are people who make these. It's not, if someone's got a you can get someone to make one if you really want one. It's not that big of a deal, right? But you can see here the side by side there, the two bags, and just by flattening the bags, they can get the bag to expand out, which is what you can do. And then they actually pull up here. I think they're gonna pull up a broken bag. And what's interesting is, while they're going through this, is they said that, where did they say it? The process for bag prep is not defined or regulated, so it's up to the player to ensure it's prepped optimally. So basically what Ultra is saying is, because the ACL doesn't tell you exactly how they measure it, that you can pretty much do what you want in the measurement, which I would love to know. Does the ACL, like, what do they allow you, not to allow you to do when your bags get tested? How much freedom do they give you to manipulate these bags? You'll see here, right? Ultra's going to say, I think they said they actually get this bag to lengthen by 1/10 of an inch here, which is absurd, right? You can see now it's like it's gotten closer, right? You can visually see that it's we're talking like fractions of an inch, but they say 1/10 of an inch they gained, right? 1/10 of an inch. This bag in question that this guy posted about failed by a 30 seconds of an inch. They just gained a tenth of an inch by just manipulating the bag. And that's not absurd. Like, I've gotten more than a tenth of an inch from it. I've gotten close to almost, an eighth, maybe even close to a quarter of an inch by especially in older broken set of bags. The more broken the bags are, the more you can really manipulate them and move them out and flatten them out. So to gain a 30 seconds of an inch is completely possible. It's not even questionable that you couldn't do that. And so the fact that the ACL measured and said it failed is one thing, right? I don't agree with the fact that it failed, because I don't think you can measure back that accurately. But the problem that I did have is they took a black Sharpie marker and marked out the stamp, not on just the bag that failed, but all 4 bags in that set. So 3 bags passed, but they marked those out as well. These are a set of bags that the guy said that they bought like in November. So they've only had it for a few months. They're probably not even fully broke in, which the other thing is, just throwing the bag for another, 5-10 games would break them in, stretch them out, and get them to pass that 36th of an inch. The ACL marked those bags out. They basically said those bags are no longer, they're pretty much useless, right? Unless they play in a non-ACL event, but they bought those bags to play an ACL event. This is the kid's first competitive tournament, and he won his bracket, which means he's probably going to want to come back and play again. But now the ACL just said, you know what? You can't throw these bags. Like I can't imagine how that kid feels. The kid just had a great tournament, is excited, and now he's being told he used illegal bags. And I can tell you, a 36th of an inch on the diagonal, he gains 0. There's no competitive advantage that player gained by doing that, right? So in that aspect, that kid didn't win because his bags were illegal. He won because he's a great player, right? That's why he won his division. Now, on the flip side of that, to be the devil's advocate on that, where do you gain a competitive advantage if it's not a 30 seconds of an inch? Is it a tenth of an inch, an eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch? Where I don't know. Somewhere in there is an advantage. So I know you have to have a hard line in that. The problem I have is this is a new process. This is something new the ACL is doing. This is something new that for the bag makers, this is something new for the players. So the fact they're marking the bags out with Sharpie is where I have a problem. And to me, that is 100% wrong. And the ACL needs to stop doing it. 2, they need to go back and they need to reimburse and replace those. Any bags they've marked out in the past, they need to replace those for the players. To me, that is absolutely wrong. You shouldn't be doing that to one of your customers. Your customers bought a price. And essentially, it's not the ACL's product, but it is. It has their stamp on it. The ACL received money from that purchase, and they turned around and they blacked out and said, nope, this is not good. If the ACL is going to put their stamp on a bag, to me as a customer, I have no way to measure a bag within a 30 seconds of an inch. I have no way to, I don't even know if I can measure a bag within a tenth of an inch accurately, because again, I don't have equipment. I have nothing but a ruler to measure by. I don't know how accurate I can really get in measuring a bag. And just show here, as Ultra showed, and I can show, you can manipulate that bag and gain and make it longer. You can push it up and make it shorter. You can manipulate the bag. So how do you measure the bags, ACL? Please show us how you're measuring these bags and what we can and can't do in the process. And how are you getting that accurate? And how can we ensure as consumers know that when we buy a bag, it's legit? What if the bag maker made that bag too small? The customer buys it, and now the customer's out their money. They paid the money, and now they're being penalized because they bought a bag that the ACL allowed the company to put their stamp on. So in a way, the ACL said that bag was legal, and then it turns on and tells the player and the customer that, oh, now it's not legal. Like that, there's so many wrong things there. If the ACL is going to put their stamp on a bag, then they have to trust that bag is being made correctly. And as a consumer, when I buy that bag that has a stamp, I have to trust that bag is legal. So in that process, when a bag fails, who's at fault? It can't all be on the players, right? Now, are there things players can do to manipulate bags to make them out of specs? Yes. Break-in methods do affect the way the bags end up, right? You can manipulate loose and stretch bags. You can do things to bags. Most cases, honestly, every set of bags I've ever had, from when I broke them in to I threw them and got them fully broken, they've always gotten bigger. I've never had a bag shrink up. So you tell me a bag is too small, I question, was it legal when it was made, right? But the problem is, can you hold the bag maker accountable? No, because once the player gets it, the bag maker has no control on what that player does to it. Can you hold the ACL accountable? No, because again, the ACL doesn't know what the bag maker did or what the player did. So who's at fault here? I don't know. To some degree, everybody's at fault, right? At some point in the process. But why is it the player is the one the player is the one that spent the money, and now they're the one being penalized? And there's no appeal process, right? Once you block it out, that player can appeal. At least have an appeal process. Every other major league has an appeal process. If there is some sort of violation, some sort of rule breakage or anything like that, they have an appeal. Players can appeal that ruling and have a second ruling? Why not have, hey, this bag's in question. You know what? Let me have someone else come check it. Let me have another. We'll have a second opinion. Whatever. Just to mark that right on the spot is completely wrong. And even if that bag failed, I don't think you can mark that out. Right? You can note that that bag was illegal or whatever. I don't know if the ACL has a right to mark the stamp out because it's not their bag. Right? It's their stamp. But that customer paid for that. Once I buy a set of bags and spend money for it, they're my bags. They're my property. I don't think the ACL has the right to come in and tell me. They can tell me I can't throw that bag in their tournament. They have that right. It's their tournament. They don't have the right to deface my property at all. 100%, they do not have the right, and they are in the wrong here. And I cannot be more frustrated with the ACL at the fact they're doing. And Trey just said that he wants to change. It's his job in 2025 to take the to address what I forgot what he said. What did he say exactly? It was his job in 2025. Hold on, here it is. It's my job in 2025 to adjust the amateur model to bring the ACL up to the next stage of growth. You want to bring the ACL to the next stage of growth. Number one, right here on your list should be stop blacking out these stamps. Fix this bag measure price. Look, I have no problem. You want to measure bags at tournaments, great. And what you should be doing, if here's my advice to the ACL. After every tournament, keep measuring the bags. Take the bags out, measure them, note the measurements, note the bag manufacturer, note the how broken the bags, whatever you want to do. Note all that, document that. Into the season, you have a list of bags that passed and failed. And you can put them by bag makers. You know what? This bag maker A had a 100% pass rate. Bag maker B had an 80% pass rate. Bag maker F had a 25% pass rate. There's something going on with this bag maker. We need to start checking those bags, right? Or when you're at a tournament, you've got plenty of booths set up. Start randomly grabbing new bags off these bag companies' tables and measuring them. See if they pass, right? A new bag should still pass inspections. Like, they shouldn't be making bags brand new below specs. So the ACL needs to at least I don't say do that to hold the bag maker accountable, but I say let's figure out where the problem is and let's address it. I don't think putting it all on the players, all on the customer is the right answer. In fact, to me, that's 100% the wrong answer. You're penalizing the wrong person and you're driving people away. And for me as a player, I don't even want to go play in a tournament. I don't want to play in a tournament because I don't want you blocking out my bags that I spent money for. And then I got to buy another set if I want to go play again. Like, that's just wrong. And I bought this bag. I guarantee you 99.9% of players out there are not manipulating bags to get an advantage. There's going to be some people that are probably trying to do it. What advantage they're getting, I don't know. But the only time they should be blacking out a bag is if they can tell that the bag has been opened. They can see it's been tampered with, because it is in the rules. If you open a set of bags up, they can no longer be played. If you see the bag's been tampered with, you see some kind of obvious issue. If a bag has a hole in it, it's in the rules. If you get a hole in it, you can't play it. Those type of things, yes, sure. That bag is definitely out of whack. If a bag is out of weight, if the bag is out of weight, one or the other, yes, you can block them. Well, if a bag's too light, you can. Bags can lose weight over time. If a bag is slightly too heavy, over time of throwing, you're wearing that fill down, you're grinding it down, you're polishing it up, you're wearing off the rough edges, you're getting like dust. Sometimes you get dust out of your bags. I don't know if you've ever thrown bags, but a little bit of dust comes out. You're wearing down the resin. And in theory, the bags are getting lighter. I don't know if it's enough to make a difference, but if a bag is definitely too light, you can block it out because there's no way to add weight to a bag. If a bag is over a certain amount, overweight, sure. So I think weight-wise, you could probably say that bag can never be in specs. But length measurement-wise, I mean, Ultra just showed you can get a 1/10 of an inch by just manipulating the bags on a broken set of bags. And I guarantee you a more broken set, you can get more than 10. I've gotten more than 1/10 of an inch from manipulating bags myself. So to say a bag is not right in the measurement side of it and to say it can never be right again is absolutely wrong. It can be. In fact, temperature, I'd love to do a test, and I should do that with as cold as it is temperature-wise. Just putting a bag in the cold weather and putting it in the warm to see if it just temperature-wise, does it shrink or expand? I'm so frustrated. When I heard this, and this is not the first time, but when I read this guy's post, I felt for him because it was his kid. I have children. Your kid just did something great, and the ACL just ruined it, right? This would be one of the best experiences that kid's had in a long time, I would think, and the ACL just ruined it by marking through the stamp over a 30 seconds of an inch. 1/32 of an inch. That is so minuscule. That is irrelevant. Like, to me, there's got to be a margin of error in your tool, and that's got to be within. Like, there's no way you could. I challenge anyone out there to show me a way to measure a set of bags and actually be within a 32nd of an inch 100% of the time. You can't do it. I mean, Ultra just showed how well you can manipulate a bag to get it to change a tenth of an inch. A tenth of an inch. That's 3 times of a 32nd, right? I mean, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing, ACL? Why are we? What? How? I'm getting frustrated. I got to step away from this. Now, the other thing I want to talk about and mention on this as well is I want to bring up the ACL policy. This is something that I knew they changed the diagonal dimension. I didn't really read the rules, but I want to bring this up here. And this is on the ACL's website. You can look up the bag specs. But what I want to talk about is where it talks about the diagonal measurement. And there's some wording here that I think maybe is being misunderstood by the bag companies, which may be causing the problems. New bags measured from corner to opposite corner when laid flat, accepted minimum tolerance 7.5 inches. 7.3 inches will be the broken in bag minimum allowed at events. And then it goes on talking about bags that fail. But the thing is, the minimum tolerance is 7.5 inches, not 7.3 is the broken in bag minimum, which means if a bag company is making a bag, it should meet, a new bag should be 7.5 inches. By the reading of this rule, a new bag should be a minimum of 7.5 inches. If they're making new bags at 7.3 inches, then that bag is not within specs. So that's where I think the problem comes in. I think bag companies are trying to make minimum spec bags, and I think they're taking this 7.3 going, oh, let's make a bag at 7.3 diagonal, right? And it's a minimum spec, but in reality it should be a minimum 7.5. That 7.3 is after it's broke in to give you a little bit of leeway. This is where I think the ACL should focus our attention on. And I think this needs to be, I think this needs to be more of an educational thing with the bag makers. I would, there's no way to prove this. I would venture to say that any bag that fails a measurement by being too small was probably made too small. I'm just going to put it out there. I really think that's the case. I'm sure there are probably ways you can manipulate a bag to shrink it up a fraction, right? I mean, you can manipulate the way, again, Ultra showed you can pat the bag and push the bag in and make it small that way. But honestly, when you throw a bag and when you're playing a bag, just the use of the bag as you're throwing it and the bag slapping on the board, it's just it's causing that material and the fill to expand. You're causing the bags to thin out as you wear the fill down. Everything designed to play cornhole is causing bags to get bigger, just marginally bigger over time. So if a bag is too small, there's a really high chance that bag was made too small. And that's where I think the ACL needs to focus, is make sure your bag companies are meeting your minimum requirements before you start penalizing the players. And I'm not trying to put all of it on the bag makers. I'm not trying to. I think this is more. I think this should be more of an educational year, not a let's start punishing people. That's where I just think the ACL should be collecting data and giving that feedback back to the company, saying, hey, whatever company A, look, we've tested a lot of your bags and we're getting a lot of them that are failing this diagonal measurement. You might want to check what you're doing. You might want to make some adjustments, right? Like let's use this year as educational instead of punishing people, right? And that's what if they measured it and said, oh, it's a 36 too small. You know what? Whatever, that should be 36 should always be acceptable. Like again, you can't measure a bag that, right? But let's say they measured and said, this bag is actually 7.2 inches, not 7.3 is the minimum. It's a little small. But you know what? You don't have to. You can tell the customer, I guess, if you want to do that. But you shouldn't. It shouldn't be a penalty for them, right? That's information you document, and it may not be intentional, right? It may be a honest mistake on the bag maker side. Maybe there's something the players are doing. I don't know. Maybe the players are doing something to manipulate bags. I've been on this rant a long time. This is something that's really frustrated me. It's really been bothering me, and I just want to get this out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Do you agree with me, or do you think that the players should be held accountable? Like when you buy a bag, do you feel like when you buy a bag and it fails, it's on you, or do you think it's on the bag maker? And even for the bag makers, I mean, I know I'm not trying to put this all on you guys either. Like this is not what I'm trying to do. Because I do think some of it's on the ACL. Like I don't think the ACL has the right technology and equipment to measure bags that accurately. And so I do think they need, and honestly, the ACL needs to accept 100% of the blame for marking out the stamp is absolutely wrong. I can't stress enough that is an absolute wrong way to handle it, and the ACL needs to start replacing bags. If you've had your bags marked out with the ACL, I highly encourage you. You need to reach out to the ACL and you demand that they replace those set of bags for you. They need to do that, and the ACL needs to step up and admit they did wrong and make that right. You have to. There is no way out there you can justify marking out a set of bags that's not even yours, right? If those bags were yours and you lent them out for the tournament and you want to take them out of play, great. You didn't buy them. The customer did. You can't mark out a stamp on a set of bags. I'd love to know. Like I tried to rack my brain, other leagues, other sports, and what they do, but the problem is I couldn't think of another sport that has a measurement of an object that is not really solid. Like a cornhole bag is kind of fluid in some degrees, like golf has specs for clubs, club heads, balls, all that stuff. But those are all like measurements that you can get that it's not a subjective measurement, right? To me, a cornhole bag measurement lengthwise is subjective. Like you can't get a firm measurement. It's all in how you prep the bag to get that measurement. And I couldn't think of another example. There's probably one out there I'm just missing, but I was trying to get another example and how that sport handles that, right? Who's at fault? Like in golf, I mean, if your golf clubs are off, that's not you, the customer. That would be the club manufacturer, right? Now there are if you buy a approved golf club and you take it to a tournament and use it and you find out that club is out of specs, I don't know. I guess, are you penalized? Does the manufacturer, like, do they help with that? Are they held accountable? I don't know how that works. I haven't really played in big golf tournaments, or any other tournament that had, softball, they have bats, baseball, they have bat specs. Like if you play in one of those and your bats are out of spec, if it's actually a legal bat, if you bring in a illegal bat or an illegal that it's known not to be approved, then yes, that's on you. But if you bring a legal piece of equipment that is on the approved list and it turns out to not meet specifications for whatever reason, whose fault is that, right? I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you guys have been in situations, other sports, other leagues, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how other leagues handle that, because I just think the way, like to me in golf, if the club is off and out of specs, yes, that club should not be allowed into play. But I feel like that manufacturer should be the one held accountable, not the player, because they're the ones who made it. I don't know if the player, unless there's unless you can show that there is obvious visual evidence that it's been tampered with. You can say, oh, wait, that customer tampered with this, or they tweaked that, or they did something different. Sure. But I don't know. I'm rambling on this. I shouldn't ramble. I'd love to hear your feedback on that, guys, what you think on that, and just hear your thoughts. I mean, maybe I'm way off base here, but this is just, this is one of the reasons why, like, this is enough for me to say I don't want to support the ACL, right? And I love cornhole. I love the ACL. I love the ACO. I love all of it. But if you're going to go out there and start penalizing customers and blacking out their bag, these bags aren't cheap. They're spending $100. I don't want to call it the company, but I'm sure this customer spent over $100 for a set of bags that they bought for their son to use in this tournament, and now they have to go spend another $100 if they want to play again. I don't know if their son wants to play again. If I was that kid, I wouldn't want to go back to the ACL. And if you're the ACL, don't you want these children? Like, this is the future of your sport. Don't you want them coming back out there? Like how is this helping to grow the sport? That kid had a great moment playing in his first tournament, and the ACL, you just ruined it for them. You just ruined it for that kid. Like, that is unacceptable. It's just absolutely unacceptable. And the ACL needs to make that right. And if you don't know you did that, I'm hoping that the higher up in the ACL didn't realize this happened, and I'm hoping that this gets to them and they fix that, right? And I'm hoping whoever did that, mark that out. I'm hoping that they are. I don't want to wish bad on people, but I hope that they are not allowed to do that again. If you're marking a stamp on a bag for a kid because it's a 32nd of an inch too small, you have issues in your life. You have problems, and you need to rethink your life choices. I'm sorry. Like, that, just as a person, I don't respect you as a person. Like, that's something, I don't care if it's out of spec. At that size and that kid, you look at that and go, you know what? This pass is great, and let the kid go, right? You let that kid have his moment. You don't take it away from him. I'm sorry. I have an issue with that completely. If that was a pro bag, it's maybe a different story. But, and even not a kid, just an amateur bag. Honestly, even a pro bag, again, ultra approved, in their video, beyond a shadow of doubt that you can manipulate a bag and gain 1/10 of an inch. So I'd love to hear the ACL's response to that. Let's jump into the Bag Makers Championship here. And I've been going on too long about it. I need to get off that topic and calm down. It really gets me worked up, as you can tell. But I want to jump into the Bag Makers Championship, and we'll start with the doubles at the Myrtle Beach Open. So Lucky won the Myrtle Beach Open. Eric Davis, Tony Smith are on Lucky bags, which, on a side note, I would love look, Tony Smith, Mark Richards, great team. I would love to see Tony Smith and Eric Davis play a season together. I think their style of play fits well together. I think they have personalities that go well together. I just man, watching them play that Open, they looked unstoppable. Like I just felt like to me, chemistry is a big deal when you look at players and doubles teams. I just think it, and honestly, it shows in this championship here that I'm doing. If you look at it, the singles matchups much closer. You know, doubles, there's a huge gap. BG is just blowing everybody away in the doubles, and I think a lot of that has part of that to do with one, BG has a lot of consistency with their players, and a lot of their players, even if they're switching up partners, they, like Gavin Cano and Sammy Soda, but they, they know each other, right? They're from the same area. I think BG does a great job of culture and putting players together that fit. Whereas I think sometimes other bad companies are just trying to put two stars together and they're not looking at how those players fit together, right? Like I'll take AAR, right? Jamie Graham, Jacob Drzezinski, two incredible players, two of the best players out there. As a team, you think that should be the best team. They were on the live stream at fair amount for Myrtle Beach. I watched them. They're just, I don't think their personalities go well together. I don't think their play styles go well together. Like Jacob is he's a risk taker to some point, and when he hits that big shot, he just feeds off that and he just goes and he needs that energy. And Jamie's a more of a low keel kind of calm player. He doesn't get worked up on bad shots. He doesn't get excited on good shots. He seems to be pretty even keel and level, which works great for him. But that doesn't really work well for Jacob. Like Jacob needs that energy. I really, really think Jacob would do great with a partner like a Jeremiah Ellis, right? A partner who or Jordan Power, someone who gets into it as well. Like Jacob needs someone they can play off of and feed off of. Like I look back to Cody Henderson and Adam Hisner when they played, right? They were two kind of different players, but they just were the chemistry was there. It works together so well. And Jacob and Jamie, I mean, I think sometimes it seems like Jamie gets frustrated with Jacob and the way he plays. And then I saw a few times where Jacob was telling Jamie, like giving him advice on a play, and Jamie's like, no, no, no. Like they just weren't clicking. Doesn't mean they can't figure it out. I just don't think their personalities work well together. And I think that's why they're not having the success you would think they would have. Same with Jeremiah Ellis, Devin Harbaugh. I said that from the very beginning. Ellis and Hart had something there. Their chemistry seemed like when they played, they seemed like they played really well together. When Ultra separated that team, I think they made a mistake. I really do. Now, look, again, it's still early in the season. Like Ellis and Harbaugh could go in not the Nationals, the signature events, and just run through them and tear through them and end up being the number one doubles team on the season. It's very possible. But it doesn't look like that right now, right? And so I think chemistry between partners is way more important than I think people really understand, especially bad companies. So I think that's why we see in doubles here. That's why BG's got a massive lead. BG's at 63.5 points. All cornholes in second with 35 points. So they're almost 30 points ahead. I think what BG's doing with building teams, they're doing it right. Obviously, they're doing it right because they're just dominant doubles. To me, I mean, look, it's nothing to do with the bags, right? If you took BG out of those teams' players' hands and you put another bag in their hands, I think they're having a success. I think it's more about the way BG builds their teams. And I think whatever they're doing, however they're putting together, they're doing it right. Right? Whether they're letting the players do it or whether they're working, I don't know what's going on, how they're doing it, but they're doing something right. But once you get past BG in first place, the second place is a pretty tight match. You got All Cornhole with 35 points, Lucky with 33, Titan with 31 points, AAR with 25 points, Ultra's got 24, and Ultra's only placed in the top 12 in two Opens. Open 1, Open 3, they won both those. That's it. And they're still sitting in, sixth place here? So, I mean, if Ultra could figure it out, they've got a chance. But cornhole scenario is at 22.5 points. So you've got 7 teams there. Well, 6 teams for second place. You got 6 teams within 12.5 points of each other, right? So that's still a pretty competitive battle. I mean, BG's running away. I don't know we'll see. Again, things could turn if a team gets hot, a couple teams get hot, especially during the signature events, it could really change because they're going to be worth more points. So we'll see. I was so shocked to see the double side of this, how big of a gap it was there. When you jump over to singles, this is where it gets really competitive. This is where I think and this is where I think my point of team chemistry matters, because if you look at singles here, BG's still in the lead, BG's got 59 points, but AAR is in second with 57. Lucky's in third with 50. So there's 3 teams right there, 3 backcombs there within 9 points of each other, right? And this is singles. So this is where I think when you just base on individual talent, there's not as big a gap. And then you've got Titan at 27.5 points. Cornhole Scenario is also at 27.5. Ultra is there with 25.5. All Cornhole 19.5. Brotherhood 18. Fire's at 14.5. Like you've got that 4th place on down. There's still a really competitive fight. And honestly, any Titan and Cornhole Scenario, Ultra, they could jump up into that top 3 if they really wanted to. Like, I mean, they have a good run, they can. But for right now, BG's got to figure out the double side. But BG's in a battle here for the singles title. And I had mentioned, but Sammy Soto won first at Myrtle Beach. Jackson Gore came in second. But Jackson's having just a phenomenal year, right? He's really having a great year. I mean, it's awesome to see him turn things around. Then you have Justin Burton, Zach Aiken tied for 3rd, and then the 5th place was Braden Wilson, Jacob Trzynski, Ethan Walker, Ryan Trader. And then you go on. And I actually had to do more than 12 because there was actually, I think it was 8 brackets, I believe, or something at the Myrtle Beach because it's such a big open. So it wasn't the normal 4 brackets. So I actually had to go out past the 12. I actually gave points out the top 16. So a few extra companies got some points just because I wanted to be fair. If up to anyone who plays second in their bracket and above got points, some sort of prorated points on that. So we got the Mississippi Open coming up here this weekend. So these points will change again. I'm curious to see because the problem with the Mississippi Open is not every pro player is going to be there. Not everyone's at the Myrtle Beach, I don't think, but there's going to be probably a lot less at the Mississippi, which means depending on who shows up to how the points fluctuate. But we'll see. I'm excited to see that. I love watching the singles match again. I wish the doubles was more competitive. I mean, it is for second on down, but not for first. But I love the way that the singles is really playing out. I love how competitive it is. I'm excited to watch this play out through the end. I love watching the Open, and just I'm now even not even just looking at who's playing. I'm looking at what bags they're throwing, right, and trying to say, let's see, this is gonna be interesting. I was watching when Sammy and Jackson were playing for that title. It turned out that Jackson had won. Actually, if Jackson had won, it would have tied. BG and AAR would have been tied. So if Jackson Gore had beaten Sammy Soto, they would have tied. But because Sammy won, BG's got a 2-point lead. So that was a big win for BG and Sammy Soto as far as the Bag Maker Championship goes. So excited to see how this plays out. Hope you guys are loving this as much as I have. If you are, drop a comment down below. Let me know you like this. If you don't, let me know you don't like it as well. I'm curious to get your feedback on whether you're enjoying this or not. Anyway, that's all I have for today's episode. There is an Open coming up in this weekend in Mississippi, so I'll have a recap of that next week as well. Hope to jump in and talk more about the ACO and some other things going on in cornhole. But I really want to touch on those 2 topics that I talked about earlier because I was really had strong opinions about those, and I wanted to share those. I'd love to hear your takes on those, whether you agree with me or not, or you think I'm just way off base. I really love hearing you guys' opinions. As always, I appreciate you taking time to let me vent and let me share my opinions with you guys. I thank you so much for all the support you've shown me, and I thank you for watching.